This episode of Dear Jessamyn has profanity, sex talk, weed smoking, and a bunch of other shit that's just not for everybody. You also may not agree with the stuff we say or how we say it, and we think that's great. We're recording today from stolen Ohlone land. We promote cannabis medicine to people over 21. If you're not 21, come back when you are.
What I want to do to myself is selfish in the best way.
Good morning.
Yeah. How's it going?
It's going. It's going. How's it going for you?
It's going okay. I feel okay.
Sweet.
I feel like I'm having a pretty okay day.
Love that. What are you calling in on your pretty okay day?
Patience. I feel like I'm always calling in patience. Just trying to be patient with myself and with everybody else. What about you?
Calling in that car to keep it moving.
Yeah.
Maybe focused then. Maybe I'm just not focused.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's all I can hear right now. I wonder what they're doing. I just want to make up a whole story about them in my head. Like, on the way to work. They have friends in the area. Very loud. I'm calling in focus. Yeah, I feel like that sometimes is what causes me to be the most stressed out with myself and angry with myself, is when I don't seem to get things together. And that sort of trickles out. That's been my day, more candidly.
Oh, it's our landlord. I think moving his RV.
I love that we both have an RV.
Yeah, I really appreciate that about them. Our landlords are also RV people. RV people are very specific people. Mm-hmm. It's like a very specific mentality in life. I feel like it means that you really value alone time. Like you value nature, you value alone time.
I think it's also like, I don't know. I mean, there are some certainly people I've met on the road that are like real intense about like rule following and stuff. Like that woman who totally hollered about the speed limit, which she was right every time.
Literally.
What was it?
10 miles per hour.
It was amazing. So she seemed to believe in a right and wrong and like have a really strict sense of that. But for the most part, I think the ethos is like, you're doing you, I'm doing me. We're just going to be out here. No, I'm not going to mess with you. You're not going to mess with me, you know?
I actually, first of all, that was so early in our RV time. Do you remember?
10 miles an hour.
That was like somewhere in Pennsylvania. But I felt like that makes me think of how I feel like RV people are low-key rules people. Like even us, like Virgo rising, very much looking for like clarity through lists and like getting it right. And like, I feel like a lot of RV people are like ex or current military. Mm-hmm. Like it's something where you're like looking for a regimen and like you want to, because you have to do things on a schedule at a certain point.
Dang, maybe you're right. Maybe it's so true that it's like you can't even have neighbors, or a combination of everything, which is what most people actually are. I don't need it to be so black and white, maybe. But I do think there is something about rules around the RV and just like, how do you want to live your life? And why do people think it's so wild that how could you live in such a small space? Like, you're really living in the big old earth. Mm-hmm. It's the biggest space I've ever lived in, is the RV for sure. Because when you're one room, your living room or whatever, is the entirety of the great outdoors, that is the largest home.
Very large space.
Also, we're all doing that. We're just also putting little structures or big structures between us and the bigger, you know what I mean? Like the wide open space.
I get put out by like huge houses, like a really big house.
For what?
I'm like, that seems really scary. Like you could be living in one part of the house and somebody else could be living in the other part of the house and you don't even know that. Or like there's like when there's a million ways to break into your house, like, I'm like, I don't care for that. Or like, what is the purpose of having a massive house? I've been watching the Gilded Age.
You have a massive house.
That's exactly right. I've been watching the Gilded Age, which I really am enjoying very much. It was created by the creator of Downton Abbey, and it's about 1880s New York City. And they're doing a lot of explaining of like old New York and the buildings that exist in, especially like the Upper East and Upper West Side of New York. And it's very interesting, like the size of the houses and how like brownstones are pretty conservative buildings ultimately. Like just one, like if you live in a brownstone that has multiple floors, like it has multiple floors because there were servants' halls and there were like just different rooms that don't have the same function now. But there's a character on the show, or characters on the show, who have just built a massive house that is judged by everybody else who lives there. And it's just funny to me because they're all spending so much money on their houses. That's one of the most beautiful and powerful things about capitalism to me, is that anyone can have the opportunity to do what they need to do. And that's just not the case in every type of government and like, or every type of economic structure. And I feel like there's a lot of opportunity for us to right the wrongs and to support one another. But I also get what you're saying.
I think that's an idealized view of capitalism, which is the only way that I would be able to say from my personal experience that you haven't tried other systems. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know either. I literally don't. I have no idea. Everything I've read about from a U.S. imperialist perspective, mind you, there were textbooks written in the U.S., but everything I've read about in school about other economic systems is like, yeah, it all ends up shitty. And I think that capitalism is no different, but there is this very inherent like necessity to degrade and dehumanize at least a general population to make the floor of capitalism so that everybody can stand on them in order to do anything. And so those people actually don't fit into your paradigm of anybody can do whatever. And that's my inherent disagreement with capitalism, is that the floor people that are required in order for there to be a floor to stand on,
that is
those people can't do anything. I mean, one or two of them may get through to uphold this idea of the American dream being even possible. And I would say that you might be among them. Do you know what I mean? And I just don't think that that is a sustainable solution or model long term. But then again, like I said, I don't know that any is. So I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think there's a solution. I think that I think every solution is problematic. And I think it's problematic so that we can work through the problems, because I think that's the purpose of being human. But I think that there is a way for us I don't think it has ever existed, what I'm talking about. Yeah. But I think there is an opportunity with with us living in the wake of like post second wave feminism and I guess third wave feminism. But I think there's an opportunity to blend that with capitalism so that we can have evolutionary capitalism, which I think is encompassing, like it's us, like, okay, what if we were making more money as a society so that we can fund government programming that actually supports the people who live not just in the United States, but in every country. Like things that are just naturally supporting child welfare and healthcare and education and all the things that are like non-negotiables. All of that shit is just stuff that all human beings should have. We should not be debating about whether or not children should have food to eat. You can go to the doctor when you need to, and whether or not you can go to school. And so if we can all be making more money in one way or another, then we can support that from the bottom, then creating...
And that's the floor. And that people don't have to be the floor.
Right. But I also think that even that is a flawed system. So I agree with you. But I think it's something to shoot for. It's better than what we've been doing, which is literally cut everybody off at the knees, lop off heads, one person wins, Jeff Bezos goes to space, and like that's the whole thing, you know? So I'm like, we could try something different. Do you want to do this Deary Query?
Yeah, that'd be great.
The question is, does your therapist know your astrology? Recently, my friends and I sat down to collect all of our personality information. Big 3 astrology, Myers-Briggs, attachment style, love language, because it's really important to us. We bring these factors of ourselves up all the time. But whenever I bring up my behavior in accordance to my Pisces sun, I can see my therapist give an almost pitying look. Maybe it's because I'll say it sarcastically to avoid her judgment. Also fully aware that my therapist is not judging me, but I digress. Anyway, do you bring up these attributes of your personality to your therapist? And is it important to you that they understand? I love this question so much.
We can't say if we know who sent it in, but boy, do I love this question.
We know who sent it in.
We do.
I love all these different quizzes that were being done. Big three, or all this information that's being gleaned. Big three astrology, Myers-Briggs, which is something that I've like never really given a fuck about. But I've definitely done it a couple different times. Attachment style, another thing that I've not really given a fuck about, but also think is really helpful information. Love language, another thing that I'm not really, I don't care for things that are like personality based, where it's like you have to decide how you feel definitively in order to answer the question and get the result. I prefer things that are like out of your hands and out of your control. Like astrology I fuck with because it's out of our hands. Like you're not going to debate about when you were born. But Myers-Briggs, attachment style, and love language feel like things that are debatable to me. What do you think?
Well, I'm going to say love language is like you notice patterns in yourself, and it's just a helpful descriptor. If somebody wants to listen to you, you can say something like, hey, it makes me feel really loved when my partner does X, Y, or Z thing, or my mother does X, Y, or Z thing, or the person who bags the groceries at my favorite grocery store. I feel really loved when they, put their hand on my forearm and say, I hope you have a really great day. Physical touch, right? It's just a way to communicate. It's just a way to just give some like succinct information. And that and Myers-Briggs, and I would argue astrology, because archetypes are assigned by humans based on patterns they see.
True.
That correspond maybe to the stars and to the person, but it's still an archetype, and it's still present in all these different things. Enneagram, I bet this caller might really enjoy potentially with their friends also.
Also numerology.
And numerology. And then attachment style, I kind of rolled my eyes, and I regret I wasn't being impeccable with my expression when you were like poo-pooing attachment style conversation, because honestly, it's the same thing. It's just noticing patterns, assigning some kind of like archetype to them, to just not to make them smaller or more narrow than they are, like your reactions to things, but to, sort of put them in a carrying case that you can sort of like hand to your therapist. My therapist, this is the way my therapist answered when I asked if they know their astrology. I think I said something like, do you ever think about astrology, or does astrology ever come up? And they were like, I mean, I'm a queer therapist in the Bay Area, so yeah, I know my astrology, but then I was like, okay, what's your sun? And they were like, I mean, I'm a Gemini. And I was like, right, obviously. Okay, so that's why you have this feeling. And they laughed, and we laughed, and it happens. But I definitely bring up when I can't figure out how else to describe what happens so impulsively, so quickly, so hot inside me behaviorally, that's also like rooted in some desire for maintaining a sense of leadership. Like I wouldn't be angry if I wasn't being told I'm letting someone down. I wouldn't be angry if, you know what I mean? And so all of that I think gets rolled up for me in describing what an Aries does. And so it helps to say it, and that my therapist gives enough of a shit to like hear that I value that as a way of communicating. And similarly, I think I rolled my eyes at attachment style because I'm like, I value that as a way of communicating. So I want you to, at least insofar as we can talk about it. And so back to this dearie writing in with their query, I feel like also, I just wanted to say the pitying look, the therapist is judging you, and it's okay because we all judge each other all the time. It's not like she's doing an extra special judging that only is reserved for you because you're a Pisces or something. It's like we judge each other. Like the therapist may be struggling. The therapist is probably an air sign.
No, I feel like your therapist is definitely an Aquarius.
Aquarius specifically, that's what I thought too. Or some other sign that would be like, oh honey, if only you knew about facts and science, you would stop the silly stuff that you're doing. I think there is a piece, like I started the show talking about, like there's a way that people maybe see what they don't understand as weakness in somebody else. And so a pitying look would probably come from somebody who's like, well, when you're done playing games with your zodiac sign, then we can really get to the work. And I'm not trying to assign your therapist this, but I do think that there are ways that we have these things inside of us. It's prejudice, right? It's like a aversion to something we don't know, you know? And especially if you feel like you need to be right, or in my case, I'm talking about leadership. If I need to be in a position of helping somebody and they know something more than me, or they have a sense of something that I haven't spent time thinking about or grasping, my first reaction might be something like, oh, well, that isn't that important, you know? And I'm grateful for this question because I want to be looking at when that happens. Like when I tell somebody what they're saying isn't right, when really what I'm feeling is some version of like, I'm not totally sure what you're saying, you know? Mm-hmm. And I think that that's what happens with me with the zodiac for sure. When somebody's like, my teacher was going off the other day about nodes and words I've never heard of and can't remember, can't pronounce. And she was just like very fluently talking about astrology. And I was like, ooh, I'm going to stop you. I'm not that far along in my study, which is just true. And so there's a part of me that feels like I should already know. And if I already knew, then I would know all these other questions that I have that I don't have answers to. And that is like a little panicky. And the air sign in me wants to distance myself from that idea.
Totally. I was like, Gemini moon is like, why don't I already know? Virgo rising is like, I should have already
known all of that. And Aries is like, and since you don't, you're not an effective leader. You're not going to be able to take care of people. All of that is my shit, but I'm just seeing how the zodiac brings up anxiety for people. For sure. And so I can see how not clearing that ahead of time or not, you know, being a queer therapist in the Bay Area thing, I feel like my therapist was like, yeah, I mean, we're in similar enough community that the things I say aren't going to be super far-fetched. And I think that overall what I get from my therapist is a sense that it doesn't matter how I talk about it, like what I'm saying about myself or what I need or how I'm feeling, like he can extrapolate from whatever ways I say it. And then he can be like, okay, so what I'm hearing is you really want to care for people. And it seems like you're fearful that you're not going to be able to. Like, I just think that the zodiac, this is leading me to believe that the zodiac and Myers-Briggs attachment style love language is really all just ways that we're trying to be able to like walk each other. It's the conversation on the way of walking each other home. It's like telling people who you are. And I think you can say it in any different kind of way, but there's no right way, you know? I think I try a bunch of different things sometimes to be like, do you relate to this? Do you relate to that? Whatever. But I don't think there's a right way or something. I don't know. Maybe I'm just rambling now.
I think you're absolutely right. I definitely think there's no right way. And I feel like everybody is just going to be reacting from their place. And I think that it makes sense to me. I talk shit about Aquarians, but I really appreciate them because they're just like, they're real fact-based dudes. They're like, this is how it is. And I got to look up the answer. And if you don't have the answer, then I don't respect you. And I appreciate that. And I think that, like, it's not my way of dealing with things, but, you know, we're all just coming from where we're coming from. And I was thinking, in rereading this question, I was thinking about that almost pitying look that the therapist gives. And I wondered if it's because you're speaking about it sarcastically.
That was the other thing.
Yeah, that they're feeling like, well, damn, like you feel like you can't talk about this thing that is obviously important to you, but like isn't, like you feel like you have to downgrade it or something. And that could be like, it might not be specifically about astrology. It might be about the way that you're reacting to it. But also all of that is a projection of emotions onto a stranger, somebody I have no idea about.
It's weird to answer a question when we know the person. I
guess, yeah.
Because I'm like, I mean, I don't want you to take this like this. And normally we would just be like, your therapist feels this way.
Probably.
It's helpful. Yeah. I like it.
That's something that I felt about all the Deary Queries from the very beginning. Even like whenever, like the first slew of questions that started this podcast, whenever I was answering them, my response is always like pretty abrasive and like to the point, because that's the way that I talk to myself. And then hearing that back, I'm like, whoa, that is really mean. Like maybe you could say it differently for a stranger. So like I feel like I'm always now just like there's a little bit of like think about who could be receiving this information. But also I think that the hard truth is helpful for all of us.
Or the hard judgment and projections from strangers.
Yes.
It's helpful for all of us.
My answer to this question of does your therapist know your astrology is that my therapist and I speak to each other almost exclusively in astrology. So it's because she is a Pisces. My therapist is a Pisces sun. And she is that bitch. Like I so appreciate this person so deeply. And like we talk about, she knows the astrology of every person who is close to me. We talk about it. And that's like the second question. If a new person comes up in therapy, then it's the second question is like, what is that person's astrology? And then it's like, oh, okay. It's just a guide point, a reference point for like, where's this person coming from? Astrology helps me respect other people because I'm like not seeing them in opposition to myself. I'm seeing them as a part of the whole. And like, I can be like, oh, well, that person's Sagittarius, that person's a Libra, that person's a Capricorn. Like, that's why they're doing. And I also, on the topic of Capricorns, that's part of why I fuck with my therapist, because she's Pisces sun, but Capricorn moon. So she's like very reasonable and like logical ultimately at the end of the day. And so I appreciate that, she can hold my like double Cancer like need to emote, but at the same time like put some parameters in place. We don't really talk that much about the other things, although she has recommended so many different resources that I have appreciated, that are based in, she knows about all this shit, attachment style, love language, etc.
I would hope so that she has got a degree in being your therapist.
Got a few different degrees.
And then she knows about attachment styles.
I feel like she references stuff like that, and I'm like,
and you say, "Oh, here's
therapy." I don't say that, but I do sometimes feel that with attachment style. Attachment style has been something that's really helpful for me to know, so especially in our relationship.
Can I just say the way that you would say, "Oh, you're a Gemini." You have an avoidant attachment style.
Yeah, no,
God
totally,
damn it!
literally.
Obviously, you don't want to.
I have a deeply avoidant attachment style.
Wow.
But it comes from a place like,
Everyone
I feel
does.
like sometimes some of this stuff is hard for me because it's like, I feel like there's judgment and critique which is what I would feel, but it feels like that's being laid along with it, that it's like, well, you have an avoidant attachment style. And I'm like, okay, I know, like, that's fine. I've been in this body longer than you have. So like, I got it. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And that's just me needing to get over the fact that like I take everything personally. So it's maybe not so personal.
That is so
love
good to
language.
know, though. I appreciate hearing that from you about why that feels like bullshit. But why not astrology?
Why is astrology? I used to think astrology was bullshit. I've had, my mom and my aunt were obsessed with astrology my entire childhood. Everything was about astrology. Everything was about fucking birthdays and like what happened on that day. And as a result, my mom wrote down everybody's astrology, like anybody. She has whole journal, writes down everybody's astrology. She has whole journals that are just like,
random
that
person's name,
like their animal totems, like all their shit. And I just, as a result, was deeply skeptical of it. And I felt like, this is bullshit. I don't really care about it. And it's only been in like the last 10 years for sure, but the last like 5 years that I've really been like, let me look at that a little bit more closely, because a lot of why I was critical of it was patriarchal ideology and thinking that, you know, how could something that is so up in the air and also horoscopes, I think, okay, astrology in general comes down to the person that is reading it. So like reading horoscopes, like I grew up reading them in like Teen Magazine and Cosmo and stuff like that. Those kinds of horoscopes are written to encompass a very large group of people. And it's really meant to like, so that anyone who flips through it could be like, oh yeah, I see some of myself in that. But that is very different from learning about astrology and learning about the astrology of the day and processing it for yourself on a personal level. And doing that work has helped me to respect astrology in a different way, because like, I think that the motivations that people have when they're writing astrology has an impact on how you will receive the message. And so I don't really like just taking the opinions of somebody who I don't know and who does not know me and doesn't know where I'm coming from and just saying like, oh, well, that's how things are because that's where that planet is in the sky. There's some people who I fuck with specifically, Channing Nicholas being one of them, that I'm like, okay, I feel what you are talking about specifically, but I don't just like, just because people can read astrology does not mean that I need for them to read my astrology.
I want to talk a little bit more about, I cannot tell you how many times we've been in conflict where you're like getting heated and I'm like, wait. No, shit, fuck, we're already here. God damn it. No. I didn't mean to, like, I will have shared something with you or asked you a question in a really guarded way and then realized that the way I presented it to you triggered you. Because I was doing it either in an avoidant, aggressive, condescending, sarcastic, trepidatious, some other way. Like when I bring something to you and I'm deeply fearful, you're going to, I think human nature is to be like, what are we scared of? What are we, what's wrong? Is there a predator? Are we going to run? Are we going to hunker down? What are we doing? And I feel like we impact each other that way. We all, everybody. And so I think it's so self-reflective that this person wrote in. Maybe it's because I say it sarcastically to avoid her judgment. Because it's like, Kylee, if I could just have a little bit more time before saying certain things, I find myself just being like, God, I say this all the time, but you know, in Kill Bill, in that anime sequence where the little kid says whimper and she grabs it and pulls it back into her mouth. I feel like that all the time where I'm like, no, even today and last night. Last night, maybe we were having some conflict, or yesterday afternoon. Probably.
Yesterday.
And I was just like, no, I just wanted to pull it all back and be like, no, I didn't mean it like that. I didn't want you to react that way. I didn't want to impact you like that. And so I just think it's a really beautiful reflection to be like, maybe it's because I say it sarcastically. It's like when I bring you, is my best example, but anybody, something with all this toxic residue sort of dripping from it. Toxic residue is not a judgment. Toxic residue is like something that will make other things not sustainable. It's not like you're a bad person for having it. It happens. Toxic residue is a thing. But to be sort of worked with and avoided maybe, or like not producing more of it unthoughtfully. But when I bring you something toxic residue, it's going to get on you and you're going to have it's going to impact you. You're going to have a reaction to it, whether it's big or small, all of that, the details, not all that important so much as like, it is important. It does matter how I'm offering you the question or idea or the reflection. If I'm saying, oh, I'm reflecting something on myself, but it's like full of toxic residue, or it's like full of judgment of you, or it's full of like the idea that somebody's wronged me, which is just never true. Even if somebody intended harm to me, I have to recognize what did I do to put myself, like, why am I here receiving this from this person? I can backtrack for years and find my responsibility in being in that circumstance, you know? And it's not that they don't have any, it's just that theirs isn't my business, you know? Anyway, all of this, I just found myself a little emotional actually at this reflection because it is what I need today.
Totally.
I actually stopped myself a couple of times from talking to you because I was like, where's that going to go? What's going to happen if I ask why she rolled up my yoga mat? Because I'm coming from this place of feeling rejected and I want you to know, but I don't want you to know that I want you to know, you know? And so I was going to ask you like 2 different times, why'd you roll up my yoga mat and leave yours out? Because it was just me I was like, God, I'm being erased or something. And that's my stuff. You obviously didn't roll up my yoga mat to erase me, you know? But it's like, I'm so grateful for that part of that question. I just think it's a dream to be able to sit in reflection like that. And yeah.
I did want to say how much I identify with what you're saying and how much that's why you hear me in conflict when we're fighting and I'll be like, I dislike like having to answer quickly or move quickly. It is the thing that pisses me off the most because I'm like, I know I'm going to regret some of this. Like there are things that I'm saying that are just emotional reactions. And I'm literally just like, it feels like a knife fight or like just like a street fight. It's just like, just doing like this is what the fight feels like. And I'm like, I don't even like to fight that way. I would much rather fight like Aikido style, which is not fighting. It's literally just like being in tandem with the universe. So like that requires silence and spaciousness and quiet reflection. And like it is, I feel like in the desire to fix it or get to the answer, there's this like flurry of just trying to do something. And like that is just it never feels good to me ever at all. And then another thing that came up for me with that was the thing with the yoga mat and thinking about like how often I will not do things for fear of how the day will impact you or how you will feel about them. And I almost didn't roll up your yoga mat because I thought she's going to think that that it has something to do with this conflict that we had before. And I ended up doing it because I was like, she had yesterday cleared this room to get ready for a shoot that we're doing tomorrow. And I was like, I would like to bring the room back to the way that it was before. And like, I just don't like, the mat was rolled out for you to use and you're not here, so I should roll it up. And I had this whole thing of like, should I do it? Should I not do it? So that the lesson for me is like, I need to do what I need to do, regardless of how it makes anybody else feel. And that comes up for me a lot with us, that I'll like catch myself not saying certain things for fear of how it's going to impact you or how you'll react. And it's like, I just need to do it because that's all you are ever asking me for is honesty. So if I can just be honest with myself, I can be honest with you.
Well, it also, there's this like responsibility it takes off of me to like have a certain kind of reaction or another. If you're just living your life and I'm just living mine, there might be moments where I'm like, what happened to my yoga mat? And you'd be like, oh, I rolled it up because you had already set the room up for the shoot tomorrow. I'd be like, oh, okay. Do you know what I mean? If that question even comes up, because I imagine a world where you're living in your practice and I'm living in mine, and conflict might be like, communicate with me. And the other person, oh yeah, cool, of course, we'll do. You know what I mean? Like, but I feel kind of like the money thing. I kind of feel far for some reason from that ability. Like I'm just so knee-jerk towards, you know, feeling judged, judging someone else, deciding you've done something wrong, that there is a right and wrong. I don't actually hold that value. And so there's just so much conflict I feel like coming up right now that has a lot to do with, for me internally, that has a lot to do with like feeling all the textures of all the conflict before I let it sort of sail off into my past, my history, you know, stories that I tell, because it doesn't feel good to me either, all of this. And it feels so much concentrated. And I can only pray and imagine and continue to work towards the idea that all of that anger and rage and devastation and trauma and stuff is like being, the box is opened and being examined, and like, you know what I mean? I'm looking for resources and different skills in there. And then I'll be like, okay, box, let's go recycle you, you know? I pray because it just feels so new in the last couple of years, pandemic style maybe, but also, I don't know, a lot of shit. And thank God I'm in therapy because you said the other day, yesterday, maybe something like, I've seen a change already in like the 3 weeks I've been having somebody to talk to about this stuff, who also talks back with skills and resources, you know? Because it does feel like a huge evolution moment. And my biggest fear, honestly, is that I'll fuck it up so bad in this moment of trying to change that, or maybe part of the change is whatever, losing close relationships that I don't want to do. But if it's like, I'm trying to be very honest with myself. And when there's a lot of anger, being honest about that doesn't have to mean that you experience my anger. But me being honest with it is being like, you're very fucking angry right now, you know? And I need that opportunity to have those feelings and then behave in ways that are according to my values. And it's like, it's practice. And it just sucks that with my history and the examples I was given, I was telling you the other day, I was just like, all these images of domestic violence from my childhood were just like flashing. And and they haven't ever before. And so I think it's just coming out, you know? And sometimes I just want so much space from you because you're so precious. And I feel like I'm fucking with that. Like I'm jading you where you're like, fuck, do I roll up the yoga mat or do I not roll up the yoga mat? You know? But I also think that it's an opportunity for you to like realize you need to just do your thing. I just hate being the whatever, you know?
I also think there's a lot of it for me that is like, I need to think about how my experience is not the same as everyone else's. And it's specifically not the same as yours. And that your experience is equally valid. And that if you're feeling a thing, maybe that's okay. Maybe you're expressing it in a way that is 100% different than I would express it.
And 100% not okay.
And also 100% not okay. But also it's just what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I don't need to cast you out because it's different than how I would be. What do you think?
I think that yesterday when you got up and yelled and walked outside and threw a yoga block in the yard and then took your time alone and then came back in, I was very clear that what I was doing was incredibly unacceptable.
Mm-hmm.
And what I felt from that was like I was coming at you,
mm-hmm.
and you were like, absolutely fucking not.
Mm-hmm.
And your explosion is one that I recognize very thoroughly and clearly. I know what it is, and what it is get away from me.
Mm-hmm.
Get the fuck away from me. Whatever you want, need, think, believe about the world, I don't give a shit. You're doing it wrong. Get away from me. And I was like very humbled by that expression and very sorry that I pushed you to that place, because you do not do that. And God, I remember when you were standing up, I like just grabbed myself and I said, please don't hurt me. God, I feel like all of this shit it just feels like it's very present for me right now. And I don't want to be doing this stuff with you, but I do feel like I would be doing it right now.
Mm-hmm.
No matter where I was, kind of thing.
Mm.
And so I don't know how to reconcile that exactly. There's no neat bow.
I got very upset yesterday, and I felt very much pushed against the wall.
Yeah.
But I also need to have those reactions. Like, I need to be able to know where my limit is.
Yeah.
And like, sometimes I don't know where the limit is, and then I don't have boundaries, and it causes really big problems. And so you do help me set boundaries a lot.
Yeah. I appreciated your offering yesterday. I know it can feel like it was for nothing, and that kind, you've said before, like, I don't do this, like you make me do this and I hate this, whatever. And I can't I don't want to be doing that. But the fact that you did that was an offering. It felt like an offering to me of the depths of the truth of your like rage and anger or something. And I was like grateful to know more of you, And I'm not actually scared of you. You've never hurt me before, which is why me saying, please don't hurt me, is kind of feels to me like a flashback.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And so knowing that about each other, I think can just be like more information or whatever. But you've never hurt me. You don't hurt me. Mm-hmm. And it's not really ever been something that seems like a goal of yours in the slightest. And so in that, I just feel like it's a real offering. It can be a real offering of your truth to me.
I've definitely been fearful of you in the past, or I felt like your rage is so big, and I'll just think like, can I handle this rage being so big? And then it feels like an opportunity to say, well, I'm about to stand here and find out. Wow. Because I am very powerful, and I'm not actually, at the end of the day, not actually afraid of you.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to look at you being your most rageful self to know that fully. Mm-hmm. Do you even Astro Thought of the Week? I feel like we should.
I think I've just been talking about astrology a lot.
That's what I was thinking. I feel like we've been talking about astrology a lot. I did have an Astro Thought of the Week, which is that, and I can't even remember exactly what the astrology is, but I just remember that it's these two planets, Jupiter being one of them, coming together in Pisces for the first time since, I think 1856 is the actual year, but or 1856 or 1858, or just the 1850s in general. But that was a fucking long time ago.
What does that mean to you, to be like, I'm living in a time when this thing happened and it won't happen again in my lifetime?
It's amazing to me, because it means that I watched a real, it's like your mom's horoscope or your mom's astrology or some shit like that on Instagram. But I watched a reel where she was talking about this astrology, and she was like, what it means more than anything is that there's going to be like huge cultural shifts that happen because of this. Oh, wow, and so I'm thinking, I'm very interested I'm a student of history. And so I'm thinking back to like what was happening in the 1850s, and like all I know about the 1850s is going to be the story of the winners for the most part, the winners. So it's going to be some bullshit about fucking, like in the United States, of the various civil wars that were happening during that time period. But then I'm just like curious about like what was happening in people's lives, what was happening in other countries, and like what ecologically shift. And like, but it's the shift, this astrological moment is happening for planets that are exalted in Pisces. And so it's really interesting to me, like, and Pisces in general is really interesting to me because it is so dreamy and so like so romantic in the way that they approach everything. And like that being what spurs a cultural shift can go in a million different directions. It's just, and we won't know, like nobody knows what's. Astrology is on the macro, very rarely on the micro. So it's just really interesting to me and cool. And I love knowing that. It's just like, it's like fun to know. You ready to get up out of here?
Yeah, I am. Thank you for everything today. And Kylee, thank you so much for today.
Dear Jessamyn is produced by Tenderfire Media. For more on our show, follow us on Spotify and Instagram at Dear Jessamyn, or head over to our website, dearjessamyn.com. If you're an Apple Podcast person, you can subscribe to our show. And while you're there, write us a review. They really help us out a lot, and they give you a place to let folks know how you feel about our show. Here's our team. Kylee C. Roberts is our editor/producer. Angel Foster and Naya Williams do our social media. Janie Leopard draws our art, and Fruit Snack plays our theme song. Montez Mickles is our director of production. Anna Rooney is my chief of staff. Amber Richardson is Ashe's chief of staff. Ashe Danger Phoenix is my co-host and co-producer. And I am Jessamyn Stanley. And we believe that no one should be in jail for weed.
Tenderfire.
Drop page!